This is Chris David, and you are listening to the Fulham Focus podcast.
Fulham.
Hello, welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name's Matthews Boisclair, and we're here to look ahead to Fulham's next game under the Craven Cottage lights on Friday night as Jonathan Woodgate's Middlesbrough visit West London. I'm joined by Will Oakley and Morgan Carlton, but before we look ahead to the game, we're going to look back at a Fulham legend with a connection to both clubs.
Fulham.
Right, so our former Australian international goalkeeper Mark Schwarzer was a model professional on the pitch for Fulham. Having spent 10 seasons with Friday night's opponents in the northeast of England, he left Middlesbrough to join the hordes of Australians in West London, where he would be Fulham's undisputed number one for 5 seasons. I'm going to come to you first, Will. What did you think when Mark Schwarzer signed for Fulham?
Well, I can't remember that much from when Schwarzer was at the club, but what I can remember was him saving us a lot of times because players seem to just, let forwards through, and any other keeper would have let that in, but somehow he managed to pull it off. And honestly, the amount of faith that our defenders must have had in him must have been unreal. Yeah,
he did breathe confidence through the team, that's for sure. So he signed for us in 2008. So how old would you have been then?
5.
Oh, what? You can't remember?
Well, fuck you, Will.
Disgraceful. All right, Morgs, what about you? You must remember it, being a tad older.
Yeah, being a tad older. I think, at the time when we did sign him, it was, it was off the back of the Great Escape. We knew things had to be changed dramatically to make sure that we didn't have a similar season. And I think, bringing in a keeper of that quality, who had done, spent the last 10, 11 seasons at Middlesbrough, it was, it just showed that we had the intention of really solidifying our back four. And obviously having brought in Angland's partner Hughes, and it started to sort of gel very nicely towards the end of the season, just adding that extra element with Schwarzer at the back, it really helped. And, it's fair to say that we haven't really replaced him since.
A club of our size, though, arguably might get 1 or 2 great goalkeepers in our lifetime. But we had Van der Sar, and then we had Mark Schwarzer very quickly afterwards. So in a lot of ways, we were blessed with goalkeepers, weren't we? As you and I kind of, I was going to say grew up. I guess we were already grown up by the time Schwarzer joined. But you know what I mean.
Well, I had Tony Lang as the first keeper I ever saw play, so that was slight improvement of that. But yeah, it's kind of, I think, as well, we spoke a while back about Mike Taylor. He was a quality keeper as well. And we sort of, went from Taylor to Van der Sar, and then obviously there was a bit of a gap. We had a few people come in. Casey Keller was no mug. Anthony Amy was decent. But Schwarzer was kind of that next step up. And I think, we were very lucky to have him for 5 seasons. Obviously, there was interest along the way, Arsenal in particular. He could have gone to Bayern or Juve before he joined us. But apparently they can guarantee him the number 1 spot. At Juve, obviously, they had Buffon, which is why Schwarzer left. Not Schwarzer, that's why Van der Sar left in the first place. Yeah. So, we were very lucky to get a keeper of that quality, especially after the season we just had. So obviously the club had been sold to him by Hodgson, by Al Fayed as well. So when we did get him, it was like, okay, great. This is another quality keeper who we need to keep hold of and not let it just be a stopgap like they had been for the previous couple of seasons.
I believe he was a free transfer as well.
Yeah, his contract ran out at Middlesbrough, so it was. He had the option to stay there. He was offered a new contract, turn it down because obviously, having been there for so long, you want to try something a bit different. I think a lot of people thought it was either a backwards move or at very least a sideways step. But he came in and he did wonders for us, and obviously saw another European final, which he had done at Middlesbrough as well.
Can you think of a better free transfer that Fulham have made? I can't.
Jari Litmanen.
Legend. Call it. Of course, Yari Littman, and why not?
That's a good one, actually.
Who's that idiot we signed this time last year as well, the Serbian? Markovic. Was he only on loan?
Laser.
Yeah.
No, we signed him on a 6-month free, I think. Jeez,
Brilliant.
he was...
Where did he go? Did he go to another club, or is he kind of,
I think he's one of the cleaners at Hotspur Park now.
I don't think they would have trusted him to do that, mate.
All right, well, Fulham finished 7th in Mark Schwarzer's first season, the 2008-09 season, where he was player of the season, I believe, for Fulham. What a first season for the club, and even more remarkable when you consider that he was back and forth for internationals with Australia. But he never showed a dip in form. I would come to you on this, Will, but you would have been 5 or 6, so I'm going to go back to Morgan for that.
Not that early on.
Well, one of the things when you're playing sort of internationals for Australia, I mean, as well as the...
As we've all done. As we've all done.
As we've all done. I did it, But one of the things they do, because they know how many European players, especially at that time, it's actually not so much this at the moment, but they played a lot of games over this side of the world. So because of the sort of the European influence on the squad, they had a lot of games, a number of them at Craven Cottage or Loftus Road or wherever, or somewhere in Europe. So the players weren't having to travel 24 hours to get there and therefore, screwing up the body clocks for long periods of time. But he did come in, and it was the immediate impact that he made there was, it was phenomenal. I mean, he came in and he played every game of that season. He kept 15 clean sheets from looking at some stats. And, that's having just come off the back of such a terrible year to do something like that. I mean, obviously credit to Hodgson as well, but, sort of having someone between the sticks that the defence had that much confidence in, was something that we just weren't used to, having just seen, Sanchez's football just before that.
Yeah, quite. All right, well, I'm going to come to you now, Will, then. The Europa League run, it was a couple of years later. You may not remember it from the time, but you must have seen it since. His contributions to that incredible season, is there anything in particular that you can remember that stands out? And also, the winning goal in the final from Diego Forlan. Do you think he might have done better on another day with that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was unlucky. Obviously, I've seen all the goals, the highlights, but he... to keep, obviously we didn't do that well in the first leg against Juventus, but we only conceded, I'm pretty sure it's 4-1 in the second leg. To only concede, 1 to a team like Juventus in a whole 90-minute game, it has to be great for a goalkeeper to achieve that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. To have a quality goalkeeper behind the defence, as I said earlier on, it breathes confidence into the whole team through the defence and into the rest of the team. And you can't turn your nose up at something like that. You have to acknowledge the fact that when you've got a great goalkeeper behind you, I mean, I don't want to put any one individual down, so I'm not going to. But imagine Man City, if they had a crap goalkeeper in the team, they wouldn't be half the team they are. And their whole style relies on the fact that they've got this whole sweeper keeper thing.
Well, I think you need to look at Liverpool, really, don't you? I mean, since Alisson came in and replaced Karius and Mignolet, the whole team's changed.
Exactly.
It's gone. It's amazing how one player, who for large portions of the game is fairly ineffective, can actually change a whole team. But it is the case. You bring in a quality keeper, and that is the case.
But because if a goalkeeper doesn't have something to do for the whole game as well, but he's still alert enough to, in the 89th minute, pluck one out the top corner, which the top keepers do all the time, you see it every week, then, they're earning their money. They're winning the points. All right, Morg, so, any standout moments from the Europa League that you can remember?
As we all know, I was living in Schwarzer's homeland at the time. But I think it's hard to focus on one player on that. I think, he was just, the whole tournament was just amazing, even if I was watching it at 4:30 in the morning, and for the most part. But, I'm trying to remember bits. I think Shakhtar would have been one of those games where he was, at his best, because obviously they were coming at us in, wave after wave of attack. But he was just, in those situations, he'd done it before. He'd got to the Europa League final with Middlesbrough a few seasons earlier. And so he knew what level you had to play it against some of these teams, these sort of unknown teams. And he would have just been that calm, collected head, experience, very professional, and he would have, been able to sort of, put his mark on the team, off the pitch as well as on the pitch in the lead up and during those games.
Put his mark on the team. I like what you've done there. Like what you've done.
Yeah. It's late.
Go on, Will.
I was just going to say that I think what you're saying about off the pitch as well, he's such an experienced goalkeeper. And off the pitch, he must have, helped the team so much in the dressing rooms before the games and on the training pitch and in training. He sees the game from a different perspective. Goalkeepers do. And the fact that he's played at the highest level, it just must have helped so much.
Yeah, I think so. And you hear him now in the media as well. You can tell he's a clever guy, and he's good to listen to when he's on the BBC as well. The one thing I can remember about the Europa League, I mean, there's not. It was over 10 years ago now, which seems ridiculous. But you don't remember the saves so much as you remember the moments of glory. Your Dempsey goals, your Bobby Zamora against Shakhtar, and Simon Davison's Alton Gira, etc. against Hamburg. But the one I can remember him saving a penalty in the group game at home against Roma. But then Roma did go on and score in the last minute. But one thing I've always wondered, and it will always be one of those what ifs if it had happened. Had we held on and gone to penalties, I think he would have become a real Fulham hero that night. I really feel like we would have won that penalty shootout.
Yep. Want to keep that confidence there?
I don't know. It's just one of those things where the whole Fulham end. It didn't look like we were going to go and score in extra time. But if we'd have got to the penalty shootout, I think everybody was kind of relying on that. And as we were walking out, we were going, we'd have won that if it had got to penalties. We won't ever know if we would have done, but I fancied Mark Schwarzer from penalties.
Who was the Atletico keeper?
Well, keeper?
Yeah. It was De Gea, wasn't it?
Yes, I think it was.
I feel like it might have been.
Yeah, he's all right, though, isn't he?
He's all right.
Yeah.
He's all right.
It's not too bad.
He would have been a couple of years older than Will at that point, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was young at that point.
All right, let's move on then. So I was chatting to Danny earlier and said to him, "What do you remember about Mark Schwarzer and any key points to bring up?" And he said, "Ask this one: do you think that Schwarzer was fortunate to have played behind our greatest ever centre-back partnership in Hughes and Hangeland, or do you think he contributed to what made them so great, or do you think it was a bit of give and take?"
Contributed. I think 100%. Yeah. I don't think it's just about the centre-back partnership or the centre-back and the full-backs. The fact that those centre-backs have someone behind them, telling them where to be. Again, it all comes back to him being an experienced goalkeeper, playing at the highest level. He knows where they should be at points in time. And you see goalkeepers, shouting, controlling their box. And it's the keepers that don't do that where the defences are all over the place. But the fact that there's a goalkeeper, it really controls the defence and keeps them in shape.
So are you saying that Hughes and Hangeland wouldn't have been the partnership they were if David Button had been behind them?
Well, I mean, I think they would have still been great. But no, I think Schwarzer added to that 100%.
No, good stuff. What about you, Maltz?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I was going to make the point is do you think had, Betts been the number one at the time, would Hughes and Hangeland have been, half the partnership they were? And I just, tactically, I was sort of, as technical professional footballers, they were both great. But to have someone behind you who, as we said earlier, reads the game from the goalkeeper's point of view, but also reads it incredibly well, that would have been, made a massive difference to how they played. And their partnership was amazing, but it's very rare that you hear Schwarzer getting credit for how well the team defended, because obviously it was about those two blockers. And so I think in future conversations, it should be about the three of them, not just the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's a Totally fair point, and I agree with you. Here's a stat for you then. So Mark Schwarzer is third on the Premier League all-time list for clean sheets behind Petr Cech and David James. He's got 151 clean sheets, with 56 of those coming whilst playing for Fulham. He's also 8th on the all-time appearances in Premier League history. He famously left Fulham in 2013 at the age of 40, and he was replaced by Martin Stecklenburg. What a deflating replacement he was.
Yeah. He'd been, his name had wafted around the club for a good couple of seasons by that point. And I remember I was talking to a guy who actually, he was my housemate at the time's mate, and he actually worked at the club. And Stecklenburg had been there a few months by this point, and he said, yeah, he just comes in. He's really there just for the money. He has, his terrible attitude, and I'll say allegedly, just to cover my arse on this one, but apparently allegedly had a terrible attitude, didn't have any interest in, doing any of the extra activities that the players are sort of, encouraged to do around the club. Came in, got his paycheck, got out, and made very little impact in the time that he was there. And it was a shame because, having followed Stecklenburg for a bit, you knew he was a quality keeper. He was the Dutch number one. He was, I can't remember where we got him from, but I mean, he was, a very, very decent goalkeeper. But if he, someone comes in with the attitude that, I'm better than everyone here, it's not going to last very well. And
he might have been the Dutch number one, but he's not even the best Dutch number one that's ever played for Fulham.
Well, there is that, yeah. But to be fair, we probably have arguably the best Dutch keeper of all time, having played for us. So,
well, we don't need to go into that level of detail. He just wasn't the best Dutch number one to ever play for Fulham. Let's leave it at that. Well, Schwarzer ended up signing for Chelsea for 2 seasons before then signing for Leicester. His league contribution for both of those sides was pretty minimal, but he was still part of a title-winning squad in back-to-back seasons. Don't think any Fulham fan would have begrudged him that, would they, Will?
No, I don't think so. He made such a massive contribution to Fulham. There's nothing you can take away from that. And he was a great for the club.
He was. And then he ended up getting a couple of Premier League winners' medals, which is ridiculous. But there you go.
I think from his point of view, 40 years old, you're not pushing for a first team place, or at least, number one Premier League player. And I think from his point of view, he lived in the area. His kids were at school in the area. He was settled. Then a move to Chelsea to be on their bench was probably ideal, picking up a few £1,000 a week to do it.
Yeah, fair enough. So, where does he rank amongst the greatest goalkeepers you've seen in the Fulham shirt, Morgs?
I'd have to say second. Second equal with Taylor, I guess. He's obviously Van der Sar be number one, but between Schwarzer and Taylor, I mean, the thing is, they both had similar qualities in the sense that they both marshaled the defence as well. Great shot stoppers, good crossing ability. Rarely put a foot wrong. So very solid keepers that you need, behind your back four. How we do it. And I think, there hasn't been a keeper since Schwarzer that I would put anywhere near him in quality. And which is a massive shame because we've obviously missed opportunities to sign decent keepers. And we've brought in a lot of jobbers in that time. I mean, you look at some of the ones that have come in and it's just been an absolute shambles. You just wonder how hard it is to find a keeper who, doesn't need to be a starting Premier League keeper. It could be someone, who'd been warming the bench for a couple of seasons, but is a decent keeper. But so far we've managed not to do it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, Mark Rodak is turning into that keeper. But I mean, you just have a look at it, it's like, okay, we need something quick because this has been one of our biggest downfalls over the last few seasons.
It definitely has. I think I'd agree with you in that Van der Sar would be my number one Fulham goalkeeper of all time. I love Mike Taylor. He's one of my favourites ever. But I just think because of the Europa run, I'd have to put Schwarzer in second place and then Taylor third, because Mike Taylor, whilst he got us promoted out of Division 2 and Division 1, both with over 100 points, it's a major European final, and he played a major part in getting us there. What about you, Will?
Well, I mean, I must have only seen Schwarzer for a season or two, but
Yeah.
100% he would, for me, actually seeing it would be Schwarzer. But
Yeah.
overall, I think I would definitely put Van der Sar first from, videos and everything.
Yeah.
Historical archives.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of having such an age range on the show, though. You get a variety of opinions, and that's what it's all about. So that's cool. All right. Well, he had 73 clean sheets and 220 appearances. Now I'm going to ask you to rate his Fulham career out of 10. Will, I'll come to you first.
I'm going to have to say 9, to be honest, because he did well in the league coming in after everything that's happened, and then the Europa League run as well. Yeah, 9 out of 10.
Top man. All right, and Morgs, what about you? Now, I remember when we had our Mike Taylor chat, and I'm pretty sure we both gave Mike Taylor a 10.
We did, and I think that was very much because he was, just such a character as well in terms of being part of that squad. I think, if I'm going to be more critical on this one, just from a point of view of performances and stuff, but I can't go any lower than a 9. I might, in theory, could give him a 10 as well, because I can't think of anything that he did particularly wrong, and he also was part of that, essentially the resurrection of the football club from 15 minutes from being relegated to Europa League finalists. So just one in between 9 and a 10 just for that.
9.5.
Yeah, why not?
I think the difference between somebody like Mike Taylor and somebody like Schwarzer is that it almost felt like Mike Taylor was one of us, very normal, down-to-earth guy. And I don't know whether Mark Schwarzer is or not. I don't know enough about him as
Aussies.
a person.
They're all one of us, mate. They're all friendly, dinky-eyed blue Aussies.
I know. I think he does a lot for charity as well, I seem to remember. And I remember reading something about him and his wife. They've got a foundation or something. Might have made that up, but there's definitely something in it.
You might have inspired him.
Yeah, maybe. But my point was going to be that he was just a bit of a superstar. And that's how he came across, an Aussie legend, been to the World Cup a few times, countless appearances for the national team. And that was the difference between them. But anyway, I'll get to my point. I'm going to give him a 10 as well. I can't give him any lower than a 10. I can't give him lower than Mike Taylor because, he got us to a European final. So that's that. All right, that's Mark Schwarzer done. Let's have a look forward to Friday night's match.
Fulham.
I am going to come to you for a lineup prediction, Will. What do you reckon? In actual fact, this is what I said to the lads last time I did this. I think Scott Parker is impossible to second guess because he seems to pull a surprise out the hat each week. So what starting 11 would you play?
So obviously Rodak in goal. I can think Bettinelli will be going soon anyway, considering he was completely dropped or even off the bench last against Hull.
Unless he's injured.
Yeah, but I think he was quite annoyed about being left out of the Villa squad as well, not starting in that. So,
just be better then.
I think
you're a motivational speaker as well.
Yeah,
just be better. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Now I wasn't at the game against Hull, but from what I've heard, Ream played quite well.
Yeah.
So I can actually see him going far at the back with Ream, Hector, Mawson. And I think Brian will get back into the squad if we're playing 5 at the back because he's better as a left wing back pushing forwards, as we saw kind of against Villa. He did play as a left wing, but he could also drop back into the 5 as well.
What about this then? Joe Bryan left on the bench on Saturday. Tactical, or is it because he's going to Watford?
Tactical for me because... We saw everyone's been saying how, on Twitter and things, most reliable source, of course, that Brian's been good going forwards, but a bit of a liability at the back. Because I can't remember the stat exactly, but it was quite a high percentage of goals were coming from that left side, that Brian, or the right side, that Brian's defending. Yeah. But yeah, with the defence, I can see him going 5 at the back, to be honest. But again, like you say, who knows? It could be 4 at the back, it could be 5, it could be who knows. as for the midfield, Kearney was on the bench against Hull, and I think he's supposed to be fit for Friday's game. K-Mac started against Hull as well. I don't know if he played well at all. And Arter was on the bench after, obviously, the Villa game where he was absolutely amazing. So midfield, I think it could be Kearney, Arter, and is Harrison Reed still injured?
I think he is.
I think
play the weekend.
Maybe Arter, Johansson, Kearney, or Arter, McDonald, Kearney, or Onuma as well.
Oh yeah, Josh.
Who knows? Forward-wise, I'm assuming Kamara's injured because he's been left out of the last few squads. Yeah. Cav played at striker against Villa. Personally, I didn't think he was that great, but he played well against Hull again. But I can see him playing on the left, Bobby Reed at striker, and Knockout at right wing. But as we know, they can all interchange. Cav can play left, right, and striker. Knockout can play left, right, and I assume he can probably do a job at striker, as well as Bobby Reed can play left, right, and striker as well. So they can all, swap round, interchange. Works.
We're assuming that Mitrovic is going to be injured, of course, but we'll come on to that. What about you, Morgs? Any changes to that?
I think we might see one change in midfield. I think if Kearney is fit, he might draft him back in, possibly in place of, in theory, in place of Mitro, and then maybe push Reed up and have Kearney drop back. I think McDonald, he's played the last two matches and he's done pretty well. So maybe he'll keep him in. He is kind of that sort of rock, in front of the defence. Yeah. And I can't see him making too many changes. I mean, unless he wants to counteract Middlesbrough's formation, because they always play 3-4-2-1, I think it is. And so if he's going to go three at the back, with, you'd assume would be Hector, Ream and Mawson, and then play with wing backs, which you'd imagine would be Cyrus and Brian. But as you say, you can never second guess him. So considering how we did against Hull, I would say he's probably not going to change it up that much. I think maybe it would just be that enforced change, which obviously be Mitro by the sounds of it.
Yeah. I think, as Will said as well, I think if he's fit, he starts. That's Josh Onuma. He does seem to favour Josh Onuma, and he really started playing well before his injury.
Well, they showed his heat. They showed his heat map on the on the Fulham Twitter, and it's just like he's all over the place, and he's starting to have a little. He's getting the hang of it now. I mean, he was seemed so toothless when he started, but he's now really sort of finding his way, and I think it was, slightly unfair to think he was going to do it straight away. But I think he's been given the time. Parker has kept faith with him, which is great. I mean, that's a great sort of, an ability of a manager to sort of, show confidence in a player who he clearly knows is decent, even if we can't quite see it ourselves through our sort of our supporting eyes. And, he's done that, and I think it's starting to pay dividends. Whether he can do it for the rest of the season, who knows? But, right now, he's looking like a sort of bit of a mainstay in the starting 11.
Yeah.
Just to show that you need a bit of patience sometimes as supporters.
No, we're not having patience. We are Fulham fans. We are football fans. We do not do patience.
I consider myself told. Looking back to the reverse fixture at the Riverside, Mark Rodak had a nightmare in just his second league start for Fulham, but now he's surely only narrowly behind Mitro in the race for Player of the Season. As Danny said on the pod earlier this week, he wins us points. Will, what do you think?
I think Rodak is, honestly, who knew? It was unreal the way he just came into the squad, and obviously, like you said, his second start against Middlesbrough, obviously that did not go very well, but since then he's been incredible. And also another thing I've noticed is he is one of them keepers that does like to control his box. He doesn't stop shouting the whole game, and when the opposition gets chances, he's there shouting at the defence, whether it's the fullbacks, the centre backs. He's saying, "Close them down. That's a chance," and we were lucky it didn't go in. I think he made a really good save against Hull from watching the highlights, but I can't exactly remember. And he saved a one-on-one against Villa, I think, which wasn't the best shot, admittedly, but he still did well to get down to it. And it does seem to be the one-on-ones that he somehow gets to, which is unreal. It's beyond me.
That save from El Ghazi. That save from El Ghazi with the last kick of the first half.
That's brilliant. The one.
I mean,
yeah.
That was one of those saves where the defense parted like the Red Sea. And he was just there, and there's no way he should be saving that. I mean, El Ghazi should be putting that away, no problem. But he anticipated it, and he got down well, and that's a sign that that's a sign of a keeper that we can start having confidence in. Because I don't think Betts would have saved it.
No,
but I just don't think he would have done. So.
Well, Morgs, I seem to remember when Rodak first got in the team. I think I was talking to you on one of the shows, and you said that although he's played for Rotherham in a relegation battle, is he ready for a promotion battle? I'm not sure. Maybe we need a new keeper. So, have you changed your stance on that now, having seen him play for a few months?
Yes, I think when he first came in, he looked very nervy. Obviously, 12 minutes into his second game, being sent off for what was a fairly rash decision, did not sort of. Fill me with a load of confidence, like most people that saw him. And playing for someone like Rotherham when you're battling relegation or fighting for promotion from League One is a very different beast to playing for Fulham, who promotion is imperative. So it was whether he could settle in that quicker time. And full credit to him, he has improved, and he's improved markedly in the sort of time that he's been between the sticks. And it's things like that are so frustrating when you compare him to Betts, because Betts has not improved, whereas Rodak's come in, and in a short space of time, he's looking like he was made to be number one. And that's, I wish it was Bettinelli, because obviously he's been there for so long, and we were all expecting him to sort of become that keeper, but he really hasn't.
Family connections, running around Wembley, waving a flare above his head.
Yeah, exactly, all that jazz. But it's Rodak has obviously taken that step up and really cemented his place in the team. I mean, all credit to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say, his shot stopping is obviously amazing, but also his ball distribution is great. How someone can hit a ball that far with such little kind of it just looks like he's not putting that much force into it.
Yeah,
it's unreal, and he's tall. I think he's 6'5", I think.
Yeah,
and he puts his body in the way. He's prepared to do anything.
It's funny what you say about distribution as well, and how it looks like he's not making any effort, yet he gets so much distance on it. Whereas Bettinelli looked like he was making all the effort in the world and just always seemed to
going out for a throw-in.
It's frustrating. But there you go. I love Betts, don't get me wrong, but it's a marked improvement on Bettinelli as Rodak.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's come to the real nitty gritty then. The lads talked about this earlier in the week, but we haven't spoken about this yet. So let's talk about Mitro. We're assuming at this stage, we're recording on Monday evening, that he's going to be out for a while. How much of a loss is he? He's got, I think, 18 in 26 this season. We're going to miss him, aren't we? Of course we are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we said on another podcast that we rely so heavily on his goals, and we haven't, as a team, contributed enough outside of his strikes. And if that doesn't change, then we're in trouble. However, when I was writing about the Villa game, I said, are these players playing with a bit more openness because Mitro wasn't there, being the focal point of every attack? It was almost like in the days of Berbatov, where the keep calm and give me the ball.
Yeah.
Whereas, with Mitro out, does that give Knockaert, Caballero, and even like Bobby Reed, or do we see Jay Stansfield, being our next super kid coming into the team? And maybe it isn't sort of the worst thing ever. I mean, really hope this injury isn't serious and he's only out for a few games, but it would have taken a lot to get him on a stretcher. So
exactly.
You've got to imagine that it wasn't just a sort of scratch knee. It must have been something fairly serious.
Yeah, I think it's ankle. Will, is it the end of the world losing Mitro?
I don't think it's the end of the world, but yeah, it's a big loss for the next few games. I mean, he, despite not putting in great performances for us in the Premier League, he still scored a fair few goals in a very a struggling team, and I think he is Premier League a standard player, and in a Championship team fighting for promotion, that is a big loss. But yeah, like you say, against Villa, we did play with more kind of fluidity. We weren't passing the ball to Mitrovic and he was holding it up and it was going backwards. We were, playing over the top because we have the pace. Mitrovic is the best finisher in the team, which obviously is something we're going to miss. But maybe we'll create more chances because we can go through the middle more. Because obviously with Mitrovic, we tend to go out on the wings, get the ball in the box, or just anything like that. But maybe with Bobby Reid, Cav, and Knockaert, if they're going to play, obviously, they can make a few more runs, and like I was saying earlier, they can interchange around and maybe make a few more opportunities, or if not, different opportunities.
I agree with you, and I know Scott Parker said before that Bobby Reid is more of a central midfielder than a centre forward, but I just think having him playing through the middle, his movement will just pull defenders out of position and create space for others. Yeah. And I think having Kearney playing in behind him, he'll thrive off of that because there'll be more to aim at and more angles. Whereas with Mitro there, he just kind of stands there. He doesn't stand there. That's a ridiculous thing to say, but you know what I mean. He's more static than a Bobby Reid, and he'll hold the ball up. You kick the ball into Mitro, it sticks to him. Whereas Bobby Reid looks to run onto through balls, that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamic would change.
It'll also be interesting to see how Middlesbrough line up, because they would have basically, they would have based their tactics against us on Mitro playing. Now, Parker's going to have to change his tactics for this game. He's going to have to change his style of play to accommodate, a Mitro-less team. So do we revert how he played against Villa, or is there a new, jack up his sleeve? Ace up his sleeve. Let's go ace. Possibly. Let's not go jack. Yeah.
Possibly. Okay, let's have a look at the stats then. Stato sent me the lovely stats over, so let's have a look. Previous result between Fulham and Middlesbrough this season was 0-0 at the Riverside Stadium. As we previously mentioned, Mark Rodak was sent off early on. Very few chances in the game. After playing us that day, Borough had played 14 games and had 12 points, and they were sat 22nd in the table. They're now 16th on 33 points. But prior to their 2-2 draw with Derby at the weekend, they won their last 4 league games on the bounce, including an impressive 2-0 win at the Hawthorns against top of the league West Brom. They had a very strong December. They won 4 out of 6 games. Their increasing form also correlates with their top scorer, Ashley Fletcher, coming into form. He's got 8 goals and 4 assists this season. Will, over to you.
So we didn't have as much possession in the game as we usually do in away games. We had 44%. We usually have 58%. But that is understandable, having a player sent off in the 10-minute mark, which obviously we've spoken about. Again, everything just was a bit lower than average, with our pass success lower, shots on target lower, tackles lower, and even saves lower. We had a lot less passes than we usually do. And with the red card, we managed 7 shots still, however, only 1 on target, which has been kind of the story of our season so far. And even after having a player sent off, we made less tackles than usual. With us having less possession than usual, Middlesbrough had more possession, and their pass succession was a lot higher than usual, going from 72% to 87%. They had more shots. They had 14 shots compared to our 7. However, we both only had 1 on target, probably meaning we were quite lucky. And they did win more tackles than usual, but only had 1 save to deal with.
Okay, good stuff. All right, Morgs. I'm going to come to you and ask you, why do you think Middlesbrough are suddenly playing better?
Well, so before they played us, And they'd only had 2 wins in 14 games. Since they played us, they've won 6 and 12. Now, with 6 of those wins have come in the last 9 games, which is fairly ominous for anything. I think, you sort of look at the comparison in their games. One in particular, West Brom, second in the league. In October, they lost them 1-0 at home. At the end of December, they beat them 2-0 away. So, I mean, marked improvement there. They were using the back 3 up to October, but they went back to a back 4. But I think I've just sort of looked in the last few games, they seem to be back at a back 3 again. But they have been using their top scorer, Ashley Fletcher, far more as a starter now. He's very much the focal point of their attacks. But, beforehand, he was much more of a sub, an impact sub. Going back to using the West Brom game as an example, when they lost them at home, they only managed to put 260 passes together, and a lot of those were backward ones. But when they played them away, they played 315 passes. With looking at the stats, 238 of them were forward passes, and 12 were key. As opposed to only 8 in the previous game, which when you look at that sort of thing, you realise that Woodgate has gone in and said, right, this isn't working. We really need to up our game. We know what we're playing against. And so we need to correct our style because other teams are able to deal with ours very easily. So whilst we may play a lot more passes in our games, and obviously a lot of those go side to side and average about 6 feet each one, but he's seen that passing is key in this league. You can't just be, hoofing the ball, whatever. You need to have that. So I think, this will be an interesting test for us because, Woodgate's in a similar position to Parker. They're both new managers, and whilst Parker has all the pressure of getting Fulham promoted, Woodgate is in a position where, yes, they do want to go up, but they also know that they're not a squad that's going to be challenging straight away, whereas Parker doesn't have that leniency around him. So I think it'll be an interesting test, and I think we will see. It will be a good game. Obviously, Middlesbrough have upped their game in recent weeks, and so we have to make sure that we follow on from last week's good win, deal with the injury to Mitro, and start making sure that we're putting our foot on these games that are tricky encounters. They're not easy games, and we need to be getting these points as we go towards the business end of the season.
I think if we are missing Mitro for a period of time, which it seems very likely that we're going to, then if we manage to pull some results out of the bag and we're still in contention, then it can only further Scott Parker's grip on his job. Because to have your best player and all those goals taken out of the team, yet to carry on performing and I'm not going to say performing, let's say getting results, because arguably the performances haven't been thrilling this season, even if they've done a job. Then I think it makes it very difficult to remove him, and I don't want him to be removed. I want him to have the whole season. I'm interested to see how he gets on because he conducted himself as a really good professional as a player, and I think he's done nothing to make me dislike him as a manager, other than bore me to tears a bit at times with his style of football. But I think that will come. I still think that the style of football and the flair will come.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I would not want him to. Don't want to see him removed, before the end of the season. Ideally, he'll use this season as an experience and realize what went right, what went wrong, whichever league we happen to be in. And, obviously, if he doesn't get us promoted, his job is very insecure. If he does get us promoted, you still have to think that the Khans will look at it and go, is he still the right man for the job? Because obviously they're going to want to kick on and not have a repeat of the last season in the Premier League. But I think it would be, one of a better term, I think it'd be stupid to sack him. We're not going to bring in anyone now who's going to make any, impact on the transfer window. If any, coach were to do such a thing with Tony in charge of that. So I don't think we would gain anything from replacing him. And I think he's shown, whilst not playing the prettiest football, looking a bit lackluster at times, that he can still get results. And I think the players respect him.
Exactly.
As you say, he's not sort of one of these managers that you look at and dislike. He's not a Pardew or a Pulis or anything like that. He's one of these guys that is so level-headed that you're sort of borderline boring. But he is, he has a footballing brain, and you just hope that given the amount of time, given the time to sort of, learn at Fulham, he will become a proper manager, a properly good manager. So fingers crossed that he is sort of allowed that time rather than, a sacking just on the whim.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was points where I was kind of not sure on Parker, and the one that stood out for me where I wasn't sure was the Brentford away game, because I went and the performance was really bad. Like that's all you can say. It was really bad. But I looked at the table after the whole game yesterday, and with West Brom and Leeds starting to drop points, that are only, we're only 7 points off second, and that's still a couple of wins and a draw that we need to gain and they need to lose. That's not a bad position to be in at all. And Brentford are a point above us at the minute, but a point's a point, that can change very easily. And honestly, it just takes a few results to go our way. And, obviously we're not, well, I mean, who knows, but we're not going to do a Slav again and go, however many unbeaten. But we're still in the automatic promotion race, 100%.
I don't think
You've got
there's
to
any...
think as well, we've been there or thereabouts all season. Brentford have just climbed up above us, but I think they'll fade away eventually. They're a good side, but they're yet to have their iffy spell, and every team has it. Whereas even throughout our iffy spells and where we've lost a few games on the bounce, we've still had enough points to still keep us in the mix. We'll be there or thereabouts at the end of the season, 100%.
I mean, going back to sort of Parker, I'm not sure there's anyone out there who thought he was the 100% right man for the job. I just think, after it was a bit like, after Magat got sacked, after Ranieri was sacked, it was just like, just get someone in to steady the ship. And it was an interesting choice given his lack of experience. But I think we don't want to be one of these clubs that is continually sort of sacking their managers.
No.
And we've had that, when things are going wrong, the Khans panic and fire the guy. That season when we went down, where we finished with Magat, that was an absolute clusterfuck of a season. Because of all the managerial stuff.
Stability is definitely the key. I wonder as well, just looking back a little bit further, when Tigana was sacked and Chris Coleman was brought in. If we'd have gone down that season with Chris Coleman, I don't know whether he would have brought us back up or not. I don't know whether he's a good enough manager to have done that, but he was given a pretty good team and carried on that momentum, and we ended up having a really good season. And Saha was scoring goals for fun, and I think we finished in ninth or whatever it was, and we were fourth at Christmas. In 20, 30 years' time, when we look back, who will be regarded as the better manager, Chris Coleman or Scott Parker? I don't know, because we don't know quite how Scott Parker's going to work out, but I know who I'd probably put more money on.
And I think the thing is, these days, the term manager is not used anymore. They are head coaches. Their pure purpose is dealing with the first team and motivating the players that play week in, week out for the first 11. We don't have these sort of, all controlling managers, like sort of, I guess the last one to be like that anywhere in sort of England was Arsene Wenger, and he oversaw everything, at Arsenal. But now, these days, there is a person for every single job at the club. And Parker is there to motivate the team, get the tactics right, and everything else is pretty much taken out of his hands. So I think as a motivator, if he still has that ability to do it and the players aren't, falling out of love with him, as it were, then I don't think he should be going anywhere.
Yeah, I think I read something when we were 2-0 down to Brighton last season and we won 4-2. I have a feeling it might have been Tom Kenny that said it, but he said that it was in that at half-time in the dressing room that it was Scott Parker that gave a massive team
You're
talk
right.
and got them to win that match.
I remember that.
You're right.
Yeah, that was a brilliant match.
Yeah,
Was it freezing?
yeah,
It was cold. It was cold and wet, wasn't it?
though.
Yeah, I remember.
It was snowing. It was the snowy match.
Yeah, you're right. It was, yeah. Okay, well, we've gone off at a bit of a tangent there, but I think we all agree, but Parker in. I'm going to come to you both now and get a score prediction for Friday night. So, Will, I'll come to you first. Fulham Borough, what do you think the score's going to be?
I think it's going to be 2-0.
Fulham?
Yeah. 2-0
Middlesbrough, Parker out. How we go?
No, 2-0 Fulham. I think if Kearney does play, I think now he realises that he has more of a point to prove. I think Kearney could put in a great performance because he was on the bench for the whole game, and I know he wasn't 100% fit, but the fact that he didn't come on or anything like that, he knows he has a point to prove, which hopefully means he'll be, playing the passes round and creating a good amount of chances.
Yeah. I think he would have been up for that game as well, to be honest, against his old side, at his old stomping ground at Hull.
Yeah. He does like playing against old clubs. He scored against Blackburn, didn't he?
That's right. Yeah, he did. A couple of times, actually. All right, Morgs, what are your prediction?
I'm going to go with 3-2 for them. I think, there's been a bit of a history of sort of, at Craven College anyway, of some sort of ding-dong matches between the two of us. I think, Friday night under the lights, I think, it could do with a re-emergence of a classic Kearney performance if he does start. It's been a while since we've seen a proper one. So, let's be confident. I think it will be a good open game. Let's go 3-2. That's a good one.
Basically, complete contrast to the reverse fixture then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we're not going to have a keeper sent off after, a couple of minutes.
Let's hope we're not. Fingers crossed. Okay, I'm going to go 2-0 as well. I think it'll be quite a straightforward one. Looking at their form, I don't know, but let's keep the faith and go 2-0. All right, well, that's your lot for this week. Thanks to you all for listening at home. Morgs, thanks, mate. Pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
And Will, you'll be there Friday night in the usual spot, I presume?
Yes, of course. Don't forget to check the Instagrams, check the stories.
Yeah, definitely do. Will does the Instagram, so make sure if you're on Instagram, what are we? At Fulham Focus or something?
Fulham Focus, just Fulham Focus, yeah.
Just Fulham Focus. I'm so not down with the kids. Just Fulham Focus. Give us a cheeky follow, why not? Well, a win will put us 4 points off the top two on Friday night if we get it, because obviously everyone else plays on Saturday. So Leeds, we're coming for you. See you soon. Cheers.
Fulham.